Declassified, 1944. High above the humid jungles of the Pacific, a solitary hunter patrols the open skies. Beneath him, Japanese pilots struggle upward, frantic to reach the incoming American bombers. They don't realize a phantom shadows their every move. This phantom wasn't born a warrior. He was a reserved farm kid from Wisconsin who, by the war's end, would tally 40 confirmed kills, a feat of deadly precision that remains unmatched. How did the most modest aviator in the U.S. Army Air Forces become its most efficient killer? This is the tale of the man no enemy could bring down, the record no one could surpass, and the harsh reality of what it took to become America's ace of aces. As Bong perfected his aim, the world descended into chaos. Across Europe, the Nazi juggernaut was crushing nations beneath its boots. In the Pacific, Japan's empire spread through violence and conquest. By 1941, America still slumbered, though the storm of war crept ever closer. Like countless young men of his time, Bong answered the call. He joined the Army Air Corps cadet program, not for glory, but for the pure joy of flying. His instructors recognized it at once. This boy was born to fly. He didn't merely control an aircraft, he merged with it. Every motion was instinctive, every maneuver seamless. Yet that raw brilliance carried danger, a restless urge to push beyond limits. While stationed at Hamilton Field, California, Second Lieutenant Bong encountered the most advanced and deadly aircraft in the U.S. arsenal, the P-38 Lightning. He was captivated, and that passion nearly ended his career before it began. Official reports, tidied up for the record, described a string of unsanctioned stunts. The truth was wilder. Bong treated San Francisco's skies like his personal playground. He skimmed his P-38 down Market Street so low people could see the rivets in its wings. He looped around the Golden Gate Bridge, breaking every rule imaginable. It was reckless showing off, but also an exploration of limits, both his own and the machine's. His superior, General George Kenney, commander of the 5th Air Force, was a no-nonsense strategist. When Bong stood before him, expecting to be grounded permanently, the reprimand was fierce. Many would have been broken by it. But Kenney saw more than arrogance. He saw confidence, total command of an aircraft, and the spark of genius. Kenney, ever perceptive, made a choice that would shape the air war's outcome. Rather than destroy Bong's career, he would refine him into a weapon. He kept the young pilot close, trained him harder, and then set him loose. By September 1942, Bong was in New Guinea, the razor's edge of the Pacific conflict, where American forces fought desperately to stem Japan's advance. His opponents were no novices. They were seasoned aces, experts since 1937, flying the famed Mitsubishi A6M0, a plane so agile it could outturn nearly anything in the sky. On paper, a farm boy with limited combat experience stood no chance. But Bong wasn't flying an ordinary plane. He flew the P-38 Lightning. Designed by the legendary Clarence Kelly Johnson of Lockheed, it was a twin-boom marvel unlike any aircraft before it. Its dual engines gave it blinding speed and tremendous climb power. Most importantly, its 4.50 caliber machine guns and 20mm cannon were mounted in the nose, a design that changed everything. Unlike most aircraft with wing-mounted guns that had to align their fire at a specific convergence point, missing entirely if mistimed, the P-38's weapons fired straight ahead in a dense, deadly stream of bullets and shells. A target caught in its sights for even an instant was simply erased. But the Lightning came with a vicious temperament. It was a predator, and it demanded mastery. Its complex turbo-superchargers often failed without warning, and in steep dives it was cursed by a terrifying flaw called compressibility, when shockwaves locked the controls and hurled the pilot helplessly towards the earth. Many American airmen had already perished just trying to tame it. The Japanese, masters of close-range dogfighting, knew every weakness of their foes. Their tactic was simple: lure Allied pilots into slow, turning duels where the nimble Zero reigned supreme. Any American who tried to match their turns was doomed within seconds. Richard Bong refused to play their game. During his first missions over Buna, New Guinea, he observed, studied, and adapted. He watched the Zeros twist and weave through the air, and realized he could never beat them on their terms, so he created his own. His rulebook was brutally efficient. First, use the P-38's engines to climb higher than the enemy. Altitude was survival. Second, transform that height into speed by diving in with a surprise attack. Third, fire one tight, deliberate burst from the concentrated nose guns. Fourth, use momentum to soar back up and away. Never linger, never turn. Hit once, leave, live. His reports mirrored his personality, precise, cold, and detached. They noted altitude, attack conditions, and results, but not the brilliance behind them. While most pilots sprayed ammunition in long, hopeful bursts, Bong was different. His gun camera footage, later scrutinized by intelligence analysts, revealed a pattern of deliberate hunting, careful stalking, a swift, lethal strike, and immediate withdrawal. Fellow pilots could only marvel. Major Thomas Lynch, a fellow ace, called Bong's approach surgical, patient, exacting, and utterly without waste. His accuracy and ammunition economy were extraordinary, driven by his intuitive grasp of marksmanship, the art of shooting not where an aircraft is, but where it will be. Many never mastered it. For Bong, it was instinct. His victories began stacking up. One confirmed kill, then two on a single sortie. A bomber one day, a Zero the next. He became a ghostly presence in the Pacific skies, appearing from nowhere, dealing death with mechanical calm, and disappearing back into the glare. Japanese intelligence soon noticed a terrifying trend: sudden high-speed assaults from above by a twin-tailed monster. They christened the P-38 the fork-tailed devil. And Richard Bong was its deadliest master. He named his own Lightning after his sweetheart, Marge, painting her image on the nose. It became both a nightmare for the enemy and a talisman for the bomber crews who felt safer when Marge flew beside them. By early 1943, Bong had become an ace. By year's end, his record was soaring, the unassuming Midwestern boy now a living legend. In July 1943, over the port of Lae, New Guinea, the skies burned with smoke and tension. A vast group of Japanese bombers, shielded by swarms of Zeros, bore down on Allied ground forces, an unstoppable storm of steel and fire. From the trenches below, soldiers watched doom approach. But high overhead, hidden in the dazzling sunlight, Bong and his squadron ascended into position. What followed would be remembered as a masterclass in evolving aerial warfare. Bong was no longer a lone hunter. He was orchestrating destruction. He held his formation high above the oncoming wave, forcing the Japanese to squint into the blinding glare. He waited, calm and silent, until the bombers committed to their run. Then, at the precise instant a Zero peeled away, or a bomber revealed its underbelly, he struck. Then he gave the signal to strike. The P-38s plunged earthward like gleaming predators. Bong spearheaded the assault, his Lightning a streak of speed and intent. He ignored the nimble Zeros and went straight for the bombers, the enemy's beating heart. One focused burst from his nose cannon, and a Mitsubishi disintegrated in a burst of orange flame and rolling black smoke. He didn't stay to admire the kill. He was already climbing again, trading speed for height, eyes scanning for the next target. His men mirrored his moves, appearing and vanishing, sowing panic among Japanese pilots who couldn't follow the faster, more powerful Americans. The outcome was devastating. Several enemy aircraft went down for minimal Allied loss. Japanese after-action reports from this period were filled with unease, describing encounters with American fighters who struck with precision and vanished before they could be engaged. They realized they were prey to masters of the hunt. By November 1943, Richard Bong had 21 confirmed kills, numbers that weren't just impressive, but historic. He stood among America's top aces, a hero figure in a war starving for inspiration. General Kenny, always pragmatic, recognized the value of such a symbol. He pinned the Distinguished Service Cross on Bong himself, and then did the one thing Bong detested. He sent him home. Bong was ordered stateside to promote war bonds. The soft-spoken pilot who preferred to let his flying speak now found himself paraded before adoring crowds, his face splashed across papers from coast to coast. To the public, he was the farm boy turned dragon slayer, the very image of American skill and spirit. But Bong hated every minute. The ceremonies, the speeches, the endless handshakes felt hollow. In letters to Marge, he confessed that his heart was still overseas, with the men risking everything in the Pacific. He felt like a fraud, celebrated while others bled. He bombarded Kenny with pleas to return, practically begging to rejoin the fight. At last, Kenny yielded. By March 1944, Bong was back in New Guinea, and waiting for him was a surprise: the new P-38 Lightning. It was an evolution of the deadly design, boasting stronger engines, improved high-altitude heating, and, most importantly, hydraulically boosted ailerons that gave it superb control at high speed, fixing one of the Lightning's greatest flaws. In Bong's hands, the P-38 was no longer just a plane. It was a scalpel. The war he returned to, however, was changed. Years of bloodshed had drained Japan's pool of veterans. The skies were now filled with inexperienced replacements who had little training and even less flight time. The difference between them and a seasoned American ace like Bong was staggering. Combat often resembled a hawk preying on a sparrow. Bong's tactics evolved again. He refined the head-on attack, a move demanding superhuman calm. Most pilots veered off, fearing a fatal collision. Bong didn't. He held steady, eyes locked, firing until the very last heartbeat. Closing speeds exceeded 800 miles an hour. The window for a kill was less than a second. Gun camera footage shows him slicing through clouds of wreckage from his own victims. By June 1944, history caught up. On a New Guinea mission, Bong downed his 27th and 28th enemy aircraft, surpassing Eddie Rickenbacker's legendary World War I record of 26. Richard Ira Bong had become, officially, America's top-scoring ace. General Kenny was proud and afraid. He immediately forbade Bong from routine combat, calling him too valuable to lose. Bong, he insisted, was a national treasure. His death would devastate morale. Bong raged against the restriction, arguing that his duty was in the air with his men. Eventually, a compromise emerged. He could still fly, but only on critical operations and only as a mission leader, orchestrating the fight rather than simply joining it. On February 10, 1945, he wed his longtime love, Marge, in a quiet church in Superior, Wisconsin. For a fleeting instant, the most lethal ace in U.S. history was simply a husband, a young man dreaming of peace, far removed from the roar of engines and the glare of tracer fire. The war in Europe was burning itself out, and the world's nightmare finally seemed to be ending. But what truly fueled his astonishing success? How did a single pilot, flying one aircraft type, reach a record that defied all logic? The answer lay in a rare fusion of man, machine, and a combat philosophy years ahead of its era. Post-war studies by Army Air Forces analysts who examined his gun camera footage revealed a precision that bordered on mathematical perfection. Bong's hit ratio, the number of bullets that actually struck home compared to those fired, was phenomenal, far above that of his peers. He never fired blindly, never gambled on luck. Every trigger pull was guided by an exact equation of speed, distance, and timing that lived deep in his instincts. His youth spent hunting in the Wisconsin woods had trained his senses to calculate angles, lead, and the rhythm of the perfect shot. Over more than 200 missions, Bong transformed those lessons into a doctrine that became the foundation of American air tactics in the Pacific. It was a system grounded in discipline rather than daring. While many pilots lost themselves in swirling, cinematic dogfights, Bong knew such engagements meant death against the agile Zero. His method was clinical. First, energy. Always control altitude and speed. Own the vertical dimension. The P-38 thrived at height, and Bong used that to dictate every clash. Second, positioning. Exploit sunlight, cloud cover, and enemy formation to secure advantage before ever firing. He could spend minutes, or longer, patiently maneuvering into the flawless strike angle. Third, firepower. Use the P-38's nose-mounted guns to deliver a short, decisive burst. He understood that if his sights aligned, even for a heartbeat, the battle was already over. Fourth, discipline. Never turn with a zero. After striking, he would use his speed to climb back to safety and prepare for another pass. He fought a vertical war, a contest of physics and momentum, while his adversaries clung to horizontal tactics that belonged to another age. And then there was his aircraft. The P-38 Lightning was the ultimate companion for his calculated style. Its twin engines offered life-saving redundancy. Even when damaged, it could limp home, as Bong proved time and again over Borneo. Its tricycle landing gear made it reliable on rough island runways, and its turbo superchargers gave it performance at altitudes the Japanese could barely reach. In ordinary hands, the P-38 was a formidable fighter. In Bong's, it became an instrument of history. Letters he sent to Marge showed the man beneath the legend. He almost never mentioned his kill count. Instead, he wrote of responsibility, of protecting bomber crews and ground troops, of doing the job with precision rather than glory. He saw himself not as a knight of the skies, but as a shield. There was no swagger, no vanity, only the calm mastery of a craftsman who had learned perfection through danger. As 1945 dawned, Bong seemed destined for safety and honor, a celebrated hero, a new husband, and the embodiment of American triumph. Yet the warrior in him could not abandon the cockpit. The military recognizing the unmatched depth of his knowledge, Keyes handed him a new mission, one unlike any he had faced before. He was to serve as a test pilot. Aviation stood at the threshold of transformation. For 4 decades, piston engines had ruled the air, but their reign was ending. A new force was emerging, terrifyingly powerful, sleek, and strange. The jet engine. At Lockheed's secretive Skunk Works facility in Burbank, California, the legendary Kelly Johnson, the same visionary who had designed the P-38, unveiled America's first operational jet fighter, the P-80 Shooting Star. It was the shape of tomorrow, a streamlined creation driven by a single jet engine producing 4,000 pounds of thrust, propelling it past 500 miles per hour. This was not just an aircraft, but a revolution, a leap into an entirely new world of flight. And the U.S. Army Air Forces needed their very best to master it, to chart its boundaries, and to write the rules for a future no one yet understood. Richard Bong, the unmatched ace of piston-powered combat, was chosen to help open the door to the jet age. He was crossing from the peak of one generation of aviation into the dawn of another. Once again, he stood on the edge of the unknown. But this time, the enemy wasn't a zero in his sights. It was uncertainty itself. His new post at the controls of the P-80 placed him at the center of an aviation revolution. The man who had conquered the most complex piston fighter ever built was now a beginner again. The Shooting Star was a completely different creature. No propeller, no torque, only the raw scream of jet thrust. It felt alien. It landed fast, frighteningly fast. It climbed as though pulled upward by unseen hands. Every pilot who transitioned to jets was, in truth, a pioneer venturing into an unmapped and perilous frontier. Bong, with his extraordinary mechanical intuition, adapted quickly. He approached the aircraft with humility and fascination, dissecting its systems with the same sharp focus he had once applied to aerial combat. No longer a hunter of enemies, he had become an explorer, pushing the edge of possibility and reporting his discoveries to the engineers who were, piece by piece, inventing the future. For months, this was his world. Flight tests, logs, debriefings, and the constant whine of turbines echoing across the airfield. Then came August 6th, 1945. It was a bright, sweltering summer morning at the Lockheed Air Terminal in Burbank. For Major Richard Bong, it began like any other routine assignment. He was to take up a freshly built P-80 for its acceptance flight. Calmly, he performed his pre-flight inspection, suited up, and climbed into the sleek jet's cockpit. The canopy locked shut with a metallic click. The engine screamed to life. Bong taxied onto the runway, received clearance, and eased the throttle forward. The shooting star surged ahead, pinning him to his seat, lifting smoothly into the blue California sky. Seconds later, disaster struck. A main fuel pump malfunctioned. The engine, starved of fuel, choked and died. Below sprawled the endless suburbs of Los Angeles. He was too low, too slow, and trapped in a machine that became a falling stone once its engine failed. For the man who had flown through fire and survived 200 missions, who had stared down enemy swarms, who had brought crippled Lightnings home on a single engine, this was his final battle. A battle not against enemies, but against gravity and time. He fought to restart the dead engine, running through emergency procedures by instinct. There wasn't enough altitude. He tried to glide back toward the runway, but the distance was hopeless. In the last seconds of his life, as the ground rushed up to meet him, Bong made one final decision. He pulled the release to bail out, but it was too late. Too low. The P-80 slammed into a field and erupted in a column of fire. Major Richard Ira Bong, America's ace of aces, the quiet farm boy from Wisconsin, the deadliest fighter pilot in U.S. history, was gone. He was 24 years old. That same day, half a world away, a B-29 named Enola Gay soared high over Japan. The bomber opened its bay doors and released a single, peculiar-looking payload. That weapon descended silently toward Hiroshima, and in a searing instant of white light, the city vanished. The unimaginable fury of the atom had been unleashed, and the world was forever changed. News of Richard Bong's death, the passing of America's greatest air hero, appeared only as a footnote, overshadowed by the staggering headlines announcing humanity's entry into the atomic age. In a moment of cruel symmetry, the supreme master of traditional aerial combat perished on the very day his kind of warfare became obsolete. 80 years later, Bong's unmatched total of 40 confirmed kills still stands, a record likely to endure for all time. Modern aerial conflict, waged through radar scopes and long-range missiles, has erased the need for the close, twisting duels that once defined the skies of World War II. The age of the gunslinging ace has faded into history. Yet Bong's true legacy cannot be measured only by the enemy planes he destroyed. It lived in the bomber crews he guided safely home, in the soldiers on the ground who trusted him to guard the heavens above, and in the tactical doctrines he refined, principles that saved countless aviators long after he was gone. His strategies became the backbone of American air combat for generations. General George Kenney, the commander who recognized the genius behind the Maverick, would later write that Bong was the finest fighter pilot he had ever known. Kenney observed that Bong's brilliance came not from reckless aggression, but from its precise opposite, serene, methodical control. He made the art of killing seem effortless only because every move was grounded in discipline and logic. Today, at the Richard Ira Bong Veterans Historical Center in Wisconsin, his Medal of Honor rests in quiet reverence. Nearby stands a lovingly restored P-38 Lightning, its nose adorned with the name Marge, a silent testament to the man and the machine that carried him into immortality. It speaks of an era when a humble young man from the heartland could climb into a fighter's cockpit and, through talent and restraint, alter the course of history. The airfields where he once launched his missions are silent now. The skies that once thundered with battle are calm. But the record endures, etched forever into the story of flight and valor. 40 victories, 200 missions, one legend that can never be surpassed. The farm boy who rose to become America's most lethal, untouchable ace,